I'm going to show you a case study where we've built a WhatsApp AI conversational agent for a client in the education consulting space using VoiceFlow. So this is the client. He is an education consultant in the space and have worked with different schools before. He's also a TikTok speaker who's been sharing his experiences and opinions within the education industry for a while now. And he approached us to develop a conversational agent built on WhatsApp that can act as a study coach for students. The main idea is that a lot of the students, especially in the Asian regions, but also it applies in the Western region, like the UK, for example, where study skills are often the skills that's very overlooked, that we have been kind of engineered to know how to study for exams, but not as much as how to best learn things, which I actually agree with, because I know like a few years ago when I was still at school, not maybe a few years, but like maybe 5, 10, 6, 10 years ago, when I was still at school studying for exams, a lot of the support that I've got from teachers are mostly on subject-specific knowledge, like how to solve this equation, how to best exam tricks, for example. But I've never been properly taught how to study, which is a very important skills for actually, especially younger students, to actually learn and master throughout their educational journey, right? And I think another thing is that a lot of the students in schools right now are not getting the support that they need, especially after school, because when teachers are not available, or their parents don't really understand, like from the children's perspective, how to study, etc. So all that kind of lack of study skills or lack of proper educations on how to study, on study tricks and study tips, etc., kind of give their students a very difficult moment to actually study for the exam. So that's kind of the high level idea of why they want to build this kind of solutions. So we look at the problem and we actually advise and develop a WhatsApp conversational agent that students can actually use, can actually text anytime they want and have conversations with the AI to consult on study skills, on how to study as a study coach, essentially, to do some study coaching. And to make it more engaging, we also added in a bunch of different features to make sure that it's not just like ChatGPT. It's making sure that it's highly personalized to your students, and it's actually trained on very, very carefully selected materials as the knowledge base to make sure that the students are getting all the right advice, all the research proven advice on how to study effectively. So let's kind of show you guys how it works by working on the demo. Okay, so we're in WhatsApp and I'm going to test this out in real life. This is a number that students have been texting already, and let's just try it out. And obviously I've already texted the agent like long before this, so it's not going to be from a fresh user experience, but just to show you what it can do. So if I just type in, hey, how are you? It's going to take a while to actually get back. By the way, ignore this thing I was just testing out earlier. But yeah, so it should be able to reply. As you can see, it's trying to respond to us. Now, I did say I was struggling with maths in terms of studying, like kind of when I was actually talking to it. So it has that memory of me struggling with maths. So that's why it's kind of saying that, hey, I totally understand that maths can be really tough, really to study. Can you study, active recall, don't forget to take breaks, right? And the good thing about this is, as you can see, this is actually focused on younger children, so middle school children. So the tone and the language is trying to be as careful as possible, trying to be as friendly as possible, right, for kids. But at the same time, in order to make the experience more engaging, we decided to actually add in a voice note function where it will have a voice speaking these words out loud to make it more engaging for the users. So if I literally just play it out right now.
I totally understand that math can be really tough. A great way to study is to break down problems into smaller steps. Focus on one concept at a time, like fractions or equations, instead of trying to learn everything at once.
Right. So, as you can see, it's trying to transcribe what's being written to make it more engaging for the users. But it also works both ways. If I were to actually go to WhatsApp and actually record what some lines or some notes, it will actually understand it. So if I just say, "Hey, thanks for that. So other than maths, I actually got an exam tomorrow for history. What are some tips that I can actually use to study like history? How should I plan it? I'm normally not very good at memorizing stuff." Right? So I just recorded that voice note. Now, the AI, the system, should be able to actually understand what I said and generate an appropriate response. So let's actually wait for a little bit, because I set the custom timer and everything, so it's not like instantaneous, essentially. Gotcha. For your history exam, start by breaking down the material into smaller sections, focus on key events, dates, and figure. Use techniques like flashcards can really help memorization. Consider using mind map to visualize connections, where you can focus without distractions. And now, if I then took an image of, let's say photosynthesis, if I were to go to the, and let's say if I were to take an image of photosynthesis, click photo, and just send it to the WhatsApp agent, it should be able to know what I'm saying. Exactly, it understands what I'm saying, and it's going to give out the voice note again. So you can see this is a highly engaging user experience for the student. And now I'm just going to talk a little bit about how we actually think about building the solutions in the first place and how we actually came up with the architecture. Of course, because we're building a conversational experience, we're using VoiceFlow, because VoiceFlow is one of the best platforms in terms of designing conversational bots, right? Conversational logic and control is one of the best platforms. So that's what we actually decided to use. Now, within the VoiceFlow, we have the VoiceFlow. It's actually acting as the brain, where it's actually trying to process and actually trying to, that's just the brain. Like, think about how a brain works, right? It's just literally thinking through what the user said and trying to generate a response appropriately. Well, how it's going to manage that? Well, the first thing is the knowledge base, because as mentioned, we're trying to teach middle school students how to study, on effective study tips for their subject. So it must not be some very generic stuff that's being found on the internet. It has to be highly saved materials for the students, because schools will be in implementing this. It has to be making sure the materials have been approved by the school in the first hand, which we did. We got approval from the schools. But also, at the same time, we need to make sure that they are the right materials. So these kind of materials have been carefully selected, processed, and make sure that these will always generate the right response. So that's why we very carefully craft what should be included into the knowledge base, right? And how we structure it. Once we have the knowledge base, then we just plug in within VoiceFlow, and it's using the knowledge base to do a RAG retrieval to generate a response back to the user. But also it has the memory, because obviously when you're talking to different students, you have to remember the students' past conversations. For example, in the demo that I showed you, I said I was struggling with math. So that's why when I said, "Hey, how are you?" If you remember, "Hey, how are you?" then that's why it was saying, "Hey, by the way, maths is da da da," right? Because it remembered I'm struggling with studying with maths. So the memory is actually a very, very powerful thing within VoiceFlow that's built in already. So based on the specific user ID, which in this case is the phone number, by the way, because we're using WhatsApp, so it's able to remember each conversational history it has. It can store the conversational history it has with the user and use that as the reference information to generate a personalized response back to the user, right? And within the VoiceFlow is where we do all the different connections. For example, the NAN, right? So the NAN, this is where we have different workflows where we can do things like the voice note that you did, which is essentially text to speech. We did the image recognition, which you saw me taking the photo of the website and everything, photosynthesis, and it's able to understand and generate response. Speech to text, the voice note recording that I did just now, right, through the WhatsApp, it's done through these connections to different workflows that I've engineered in the back end, right? Now, for the front end side, we use something called TXA agents. Now, you can use different however you want. I'm just kind of using this as how we did it. Of course, you can plug it into CRM, but because we're not actually rolling this out for every student in the school, it's just students who need a little bit more help. So like the schools that actually like subdivide the students into different like needs, or those who need more special care or special attentions, they have been assigned to use this agent a little bit more. So it's not everyone. So we don't actually need like a CRM per se, because there's not enough people to actually justify the CRM. So we use something called TXA, where we can still do the dashboarding. We can still, as the front end essentially, as a dashboarding, this is where we also do the contact management, which to be honest is not that much management that needs to be done, where like you can just go in and on the client side and just kind of see the conversations happening, and you can just jump in if you want. So where you can see the dashboarding, and this is where you also connect the voice flow, which is, remember, is where the brain, the operational like thinking, to the WhatsApp part, right? So this is kind of the way that we think about how we structure and how we architect the entire build. And I can show you a little bit about the voice flow, right? So obviously this is not the actual version that we actually deployed. So like this is just for you guys to kind of show you kind of the core functionality behind it. So it would do a greeting, which you didn't see because it was the first time that we saw that because this message only appears if it's the first time you text the agent, which I've already talked to the agent, so it doesn't do the greetings. And what you'd like to learn today, and you capture the user to last utterance. You do the last utterance, right? And you do the knowledge-based search to actually, with the knowledge base, with all the documents that we trained, and actually generate the response back to the user, right? And through the knowledge-based search and the prompt step, and we do the processing and the TTS. So the processing, actually, we don't actually, like, we have to do some processing because when we're transcribing the words to audio, it can't have emojis, because that's the way it will say something like, hi, smiley face, right? Because if you use emoji, that's what the text to speech is going to transcribe. So we need to actually clean the data, and also pass all the information to a workflow where we are going to do a text to speech as a voice note back to the user, right? And we actually add in some sort of filters as well to make sure, where the logic is that if a student asks the same questions more than once, so like we check if the user's question, most recent question, is the same topic as the last question. So if I keep saying I'm struggling with maths, the AI responds, I'm struggling with maths, the AI responds. So that would be on the same topic because I keep saying I'm struggling with maths, right? If that's true, then we actually add a counter. And if the counter is more than or equals to 4, meaning that it's asking the same question like 4 times, same topic 4 times, the logic behind is that if that happens, that means the student is really struggling with that specific topic, and that would require special attention from the teacher. So we have that counter logic going on. If that's true, then we actually send it to, I just put it in Airtable for you guys to see, but in the actual like solution, we actually plug it into the school's like system, where it will actually do an email notifying the appropriate teacher for that specific class. But then again, don't worry too much about kind of that specific logic, but that's the idea. And yeah, and the image recognition is where you do the image upload and you check that the file has a JPEG, which is the image format. And it's going to go through another workflow to do the image recognition, send the explanation back, and then go back to the main workflow. So hopefully that's kind of gives you kind of an idea how the main backend works. Obviously, there's a bunch of different things that I can't really show you on YouTube right now, but hopefully you guys get the core functionality, especially just from this architecture diagram, how it's going to function as a whole. So hopefully this is giving you an idea of this specific case study, what we built for the client, how it works, and what's the result for the client, right? Which is obviously making the students happy and the schools happy. So yeah, that's it for me, guys. And thanks for watching. See you in the next one.